It was 7 o'clock in the morning, and my wife was washing the car in the driveway again. For our 25th wedding anniversary, I had given her a red 1965 Mustang convertible. It was a special gift, and I hoped it would be worth the $20,000 it cost me. I was wrong. Julie was having an affair with one of the guys who worked in my office complex. She thought she was being discreet, but she wasn't. She was careless when meeting him, and he was chatty. I became aware of what was going on when some of the guys in the break room started laughing. Putting it all together was not difficult. Frank Tolliver was enjoying my wife's company and bragging about it to all of his co-workers. This had been going on for over 6 weeks now. Twice I mentioned to Julie that I had heard stories about her and Frank and that I wished they would stop. Both times she denied that anything was going on. She also expressed extreme resentment that I had the nerve to question her fidelity after 25 years of marriage. We got married right out of high school. I realize now that we were too young. I don't know if it was a childhood crush or just a teenage infatuation, but it was about to end. We had a daughter, Sharon, who was in high school and getting ready to graduate. In less than a month, she was scheduled to attend the University of Iowa. Over the years, I had many opportunities to change, but held back to keep the marriage alive. What a waste of time. If it hadn't been for Frank's chatty tongue, I probably would have never known about Julie's affair. Now I caught myself wondering if this had happened before, but I was too dumb to realize it. I'd always trusted her. Frank usually took Wednesdays off. I was willing to bet Julie would spend as much time washing her body as she did washing her precious car. "Daddy, will you pick me up on your way to work?" Sharon was ready to go, so I finished my coffee and we headed for the door. I paused next to my wife for a moment as we walked to the car. "This is the last time I'm going to mention this. Stop going out with Frank Tolliver." All I got was an angry look. "Damn it, John. Frank Tolliver and I have nothing in common. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Whoever is feeding you this shit is just trying to piss you off. Stop worrying about things that aren't happening." Julia turned away and continued wiping down the car, and I just stood there looking at her. Eventually, I walked over to the car and backed out. It was quiet in the car for the first few minutes. Sharon was looking out the window, and I got the feeling that she was upset with me. "What's wrong? Why are you so moody?" Without turning her head, Sharon replied, "Daddy, how long are you going to let her get away with this? It's been a long time, and I'm really having a hard time putting up with this crap. Thank God I'm leaving in a couple weeks. I feel as disgusted with you for doing nothing as I do with her for doing it." "What kind of shit do you put up with? How is all this affecting you? Your mom doesn't do anything at home, does she?" "Nothing, Dad. It's Margie Tolliver. She takes it out on me every day that my whore mother took her father away from the family. Her parents divorced over a year ago, but she's only been whining for 3 weeks. Apparently her mother is fully aware of what's going on between her mom and Mr. Tolliver and complains about it every day at home. Margie's family life sucks, and she's sharing that with me." "I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were so worked up about it. I've asked your mother 3 times to stop, and 3 times she's just told me no. I'll try to put an end to it today." The look my daughter threw at me seemed to indicate that she didn't believe me. "Anyway, thanks for the ride, Daddy." As I watched her walk towards the school, I realized it was time to put an end to this. I knew where Frank Tolliver lived. When he got divorced, his wife took the kids and moved in with her parents. Frank tried to sell the house but owed too much on the mortgage to recoup the investment. Because of child support and alimony, he had trouble making the house payment. I avoided going to the break room at work for the last month or so as not to lower my manhood even further. I stopped and had a coffee before getting to work. After making everyone aware of my presence, I told my secretary Joyce that I would be busy in a meeting on the 3rd floor during lunch and for the rest of the day. She said she would wait with my messages until I returned. It was easy to walk out the back door and leave. I sat outside, not far from the Tolliver house, and waited for my wife. She showed up only 20 minutes later. She actually had her own garage door opener at his house. After the door closed, I waited 30 minutes before approaching the house. No one noticed when I tried the side garage door. It was unlocked. Julie had the convertible top of the Mustang. Frank had a small BMW convertible. I don't know much about cars, but I knew it was an expensive car. I picked up Julie's purse, which she had left lying on the car seat. I would have loved to go inside and catch them in bed, but that wasn't part of my plans. I didn't need to see it to believe it. Frank had a 5-liter canister of gasoline next to the lawnmower. It was enough to douse both machines and scatter some around the storage area in his workshop. By the time they realized the garage was engulfed in flames, there was nothing they could do to stop it. I had to hurry a bit to get back to my car before there was any sign of it. As I turned the corner, I could make out a few jets of smoke in my rearview mirror. 10 minutes later, I returned to work and told the receptionist that the meeting was canceled. It felt like I had never even left the building. When I got home, Sharon was sitting in the living room watching TV. Julie wasn't there, and Sharon had no idea where she was. I was a little worried. Were the two lovers trapped in the house? Had they suffocated or burned alive? Were they in the hospital being treated for something? I was starting to regret what I had done when the phone rang. The phone call was from Julie's sister. "Hey, John, it's Candace. I just wanted to let you know that Julie's at my house right now. She was in an accident on the Mustang. She's fine, but the Mustang's totaled. She's a little nervous right now and she can't talk. I'll bring her home later tonight, and then she can explain everything." "Do you want us to pick her up?" "No. John, she's very upset, and I think it's best if you wait until I bring her home. She's sorry about what happened to the car." "Okay. Where is that car now?" I'm not sure. I think they towed it to a parking lot somewhere. Julie can tell you about it later." "Thanks, John. I was sure you'd understand." When I hung up the phone, I had a big smile on my face. Sharon noticed it, said nothing, and smiled back. "I think you should take my car and go visit your Aunt Candace. Your mom seems to have been in an accident on the Mustang and won't talk to me right now. You could offer to help and quietly pry. I'd love to know what happened, but I can't ask. Maybe you'll get lucky. Just a tip if you're interested." "You know I'm interested. Give me your keys. You want me to take her home or leave her there?" "Surprise me," I said. She laughed lightly as she walked out the door. I got ready for a quiet evening of beer and TV. Sharon came home about a couple hours later, smiling even wider than when she left. "I didn't think you were capable of that. You're a real son of a bitch, Dad. I like that. I was very careful. There was no way I was going to admit to anything. Any conclusions my daughter might come to, she'd draw on her own." "Where's the car?" "I'm not sure, but it can't be taken away until the insurance company checks it out. My mom didn't want to talk about her and was very evasive." "Where's your mom? Why didn't she come home with you?" "It sounds like she is worried about how you will react." I asked her to explain, and she got flustered. Candace said she's going to stay there for a few days until things settle down. I don't know what that means. I asked for an explanation and got no answers. "I hope you don't have any questions for me because I won't answer them either." "Good boy, Daddy. I don't want to know anything more. I can wait for the sequel." Sharon went to bed and I grabbed another beer. Everything worked out just fine. The next day at work, things were a little different. There were no snide remarks from visitors to the break room. My secretary Joyce was even a little more attentive than usual. Frank Tolliver didn't show up for work. I didn't ask around about him and no one gave any information. Some of the guys seemed to be avoiding me. That afternoon, a small bouquet of daisies was brought to my desk. The note said, "Thank you, Montana." Frank's wife's name was Marcia. I didn't know any other people with those initials. Joyce was now smiling every time she looked at me. I was a little worried that Marcia had come to this conclusion so quickly. I hoped the police wouldn't do the same. When I got home, Sharon was in a good mood. Margie Tolliver apologized to her for acting like a bitch for the past few weeks. They didn't say another word. At the back of the newspaper was a short story about a house fire that had burned down 2 cars. Candace called Sharon on her cell phone and told her that Julie would be staying with them for a few more days. Sharon and I went to a restaurant to eat sushi. Friday morning, the police showed up at work to discuss the fire at Frank Tolliver's house. They talked to me in my office and also to Joyce. Joyce told them that I had been there all day Wednesday. She did not mention the short time I was upstairs. No one else was able to refute what we said. It was strange because Joyce and I had not conspired beforehand, and yet we both said the same thing. The police did indicate that the fire at Frank's house was definitely arson, but they had no other evidence. They were very, very careful not to mention my wife or her role in the whole situation. I found that interesting. I also wondered why Joyce was going out of her way to protect me. On Saturday, Sharon did the laundry and cleaning around the house while I did the yard work. That night, we went to a pay-per-view movie theater and ordered pizza. We both tried not to talk about anything that pertained to our problem. I was amazed at how much my daughter had matured. Julie came home on Sunday. She was wearing the clothes Candace had given her. I wanted to ask her where her clothes were, but changed my mind. She spent most of the day in her room. Sharon made us dinner, but Julie didn't seem to be too hungry. We didn't talk or discuss anything about the car or what had happened to it. I slept on the couch that night. Monday morning, Joyce was in a good mood. The gang of wisecrackers with their sarcastic smirks were gone. Many of the male employees were clearly trying not to meet my gaze. Frank took a week's vacation. I contacted my auto insurer and asked him to stop by my house and get my wife's insurance information on the Mustang. I couldn't admit to knowing anything about it without revealing myself. I found out by accident that a car that burns down in the garage is covered by the homeowner's insurance, not the automobile insurer. This means that Frank's insurance company would have had to pay for Julie's car. I was curious to see where this would lead. The arson investigation team and the insurance company concluded that the fire was indeed arson. After investigating Frank Tolliver's financial situation, the insurance company refused to pay any compensation unless he could prove that he was not responsible for the fire. They felt that the fire would benefit him financially and that he had a motive to set it himself. The police were of the same opinion, but they had to prove that he had done it. When I arrived, Sharon was home alone. She handed me the note Candace had left, letting me know that she had taken Julie to the doctor to be sedated and that Julie would be staying at her house for a few more days. The insurance agent left some papers on the coffee table. I didn't bother to look through them. Sharon and I went to dinner at Red Lobster. Officially, I never found out where Julie's car was or what happened to it. Officially, all I knew was that the Mustang had burned down. I found it interesting that no one told me anything. The next morning, I made a quick phone call to Candace. "Hi, it's John. Just wanted to say I appreciate what you're doing for Julie." "Thanks, John. I think she needs to stay here for a few more days. The doctor prescribed her some pretty strong medication." "I don't mind. I just have 2 questions. I understand her car was involved in a fire. I'd like to know where the car was when it caught fire and why it was there. Call me later today and give me the answers to both of these questions. If I don't hear from you or don't get an answer, I will bring all of Julie's things to your house tonight. Do you understand?" "Under the circumstances, John, I think you're being unreasonable. Julie's under a lot of stress right now. This kind of thing isn't going to help her." "I don't expect an answer from her. I'm expecting one from you. I'm sure you know what's going on. Either you tell me or Julie becomes your new house guest on a permanent basis. Do you understand me?" "I understand, John. I'll do everything I can." Joyce was full of enthusiasm and joy. I hoped that would be a good sign. "I've arranged for your lunch, Mr. Woods. At noon, you will meet Marcia Tolliver at the Olive Garden. When you arrive, she'll be waiting for you at your table." I didn't really want to have lunch with Frank Tolliver's wife, but I felt obligated. All I could do was try to be a gentleman. I looked at Joyce. "Would you like to come with me? I'd rather not be alone in a situation like this." "Sorry, boss. I'd be happy to join you for dinner, but lunch doesn't interest me." I noticed a slight smile on her face as she walked away. What the hell did she mean by that? I never sent any signals to Joyce or anyone else I had working for me that I might be available. It was a strict prohibition. I think my new status as a potential divorcee had an effect on some of the ladies around me. What the hell could Marcia Tolliver possibly want? Around 10 o'clock, Joyce poked her head through the door. "There's a Mr. Brian Mapes here to see you. Are you busy?" "No, ask him in right away." Brian was married to Candace. He was a big guy, looked like Bigfoot. Brian looked nervous as hell when he walked into the office and sat down at his desk. I just stared at him for a second, waiting for him to start a conversation. "Candace asked me to come see you. She said she was afraid you'd get mad at her because of what she told you." "Brian, you look worried as hell. Why is it so hard for you to talk to me? I didn't do anything to cause this, did I? No, John, it's what I did. I'm not myself. This has never happened to Candace before, and I'm scared. Why are you scared? What could you possibly be afraid of? I think I hurt her. I hit her hard, John. I took her to the hospital, and then I came to see you. I didn't know what else to do. Brian's not a simpleton. He's a smart man who provided well for his wife and children. Both of his children are now gone from home, but he has always been a good father to them. I never suspected there were problems in their marriage. Turns out Brian didn't suspect it either. Edna, why don't you start from the beginning, Brian? We have plenty of time, so you don't have to rush. Joyce brought 2 cups of coffee while Brian tried to relax by taking deep breaths. After a few seconds, he felt better. You're not going to be angry with me, are you, John? No, I promise I won't lose my temper. Candace told me that Julie had a boyfriend. Frank, what's his name? I don't remember his last name. She was at his house when there was a fire in the garage and her Mustang burned to the ground. Julie thinks you started the fire, but the police don't believe her. She's afraid to go home. She tried it this weekend and she had a nervous breakdown. That's what I should have told you. It doesn't sound too traumatizing. I still don't understand why it upset you so much. I started asking her some questions just to clear the air. Candace started to get angry with me. The more questions I asked, the more upset she got. What kind of questions were they? John, do you remember the 3-day cruise the girls went on last year to Cancun? Yes. Why did you ask? I always felt there was something suspicious about that vacation. For some reason, I connected that trip to Julie's affair. I don't know why. I asked Candace if Julie was having an affair on the cruise, and she exploded. I guess you didn't get an answer. Oh, but I did, although not as much as I would have liked. She ranted for a few minutes about how you and I are lousy husbands. She said that if we were more attentive in bed, they wouldn't have to run around. That was the exact phrase she used, running around and around. It was around this time that I realized that Candace was cheating on me too, just like Julie cheated on you. I'm sorry, Brian. It wasn't my intention to drag you into this. It's gotten worse, John. I insisted she tell me the name of the guy she was cheating with. She laughed at me and said, "Which one?" I think that's when I lost my temper. After I hit her a few times, she was scared to death. She had never seen me mad before. In 22 years, I had never once resorted to violence until this morning. She asked me to stop hitting her, and I told her I wouldn't stop until she gave me names. She said the 2 guys they went on the cruise with were from their health club, Craig and Will, what's his name. Then she gave me Frank's name as the guy Julie was with. I threatened to hit her again if she didn't give me all the names. It wasn't who Julie was with, it was who she was with. She mentioned Clayton Simmons, the guy we went to high school with. Before she could say anything, I hit her again. Then I got scared, put her in the car, and took her to the emergency room. I came straight here to see you. I couldn't find the words. What would you say to a guy who just beat his wife so badly that she ended up in the hospital? I thought she really underestimated her husband's soft nature. She probably would have gotten away with it if she hadn't tried to slap him in the face. Big mistake. We sat in silence for a few seconds. What now, Brian? I don't know. I think I need help, John. We didn't have to wait long. 2 uniformed police officers squeezed past Joyce and entered the room. Which one of you is Brian Mapes? Brian obediently raised his hand and was immediately handcuffed and led out. Joyce brought me a fresh cup of coffee. I asked Joyce to call Brian's lawyer before I went to lunch with Marcia Tolliver. There were empty tables in the cafe, but she wasn't alone. Mr. Woods, I'm glad you're here. This is my friend Mario. He's here as my companion. Mario was a very large man with a dark complexion and thick hair. He sat next to Marcia, but not too close. It was hard to tell what the relationship was between the 2 of them. The conversation was very general. For some stupid reason, we discussed things like the weather and traffic. After the food arrived, we hardly spoke at all. It was obvious that we were both avoiding the topic. After dinner, we ordered coffee, and Marcia coughed. My husband's cheating is extremely embarrassing to me, Mr. Woods. I'm usually very good at turning a blind eye to his foolishness, but since my divorce I can see that it was a mistake on my part. There is nothing I can do to undo what has happened. However, I can prepare you for what may happen in the future. Frank is a very cruel and vindictive man. If he feels that you caused his problems, he will do everything in his power to get revenge. I realize that everything is his fault, but he will not look at it that way. There is a possibility that he may manipulate your wife into doing things you never imagined. Even though she loves you, she may be more than willing to help Frank get even. I advise you not to trust her under any circumstances until you are sure of her. Do you understand that so far? I just nodded. I can guarantee that Frank will try to harm you in any way in the very near future. My purpose here today is simply to warn you to be careful. I will do everything in my power to help, but I'm afraid it won't be enough. Mario is with me because of Frank. Mario is my brother-in-law, and he'll be here until the family resolves my problems with Frank. Do you have any questions? I had 100 questions, but I shook my head negatively. We finished our coffee in silence. Marcia insisted on paying the bill, and we went our separate ways. I used to be angry about all this, but now I was scared. It was quiet at work. Joyce was dying to know what had happened at lunch, but I didn't feel like talking about it. Brian's lawyer was busy posting bail. I felt like I should do something for Candace, but I decided not to. I took the day off and stopped by Sharon's school. It only took a few minutes for the school administration to get Sharon's permission to graduate early. She was able to turn in her textbooks and close her locker in less than an hour. She will miss the graduation ceremony with her friends, but she didn't seem to care. On the way home, I called work and asked Joyce to put me on a 2-week vacation. I hadn't expected to be gone that long, but it made sense to have a little extra time. Sharon had already put away most of her things that she had taken with her, so loading them into the car was fairly easy. Under the circumstances, I would feel much more at ease knowing that Sharon was 1,000 miles away, at school, safe. There was no problem getting her to her dorm early. Old man McElhaney, who lived across the street from our house, was more than happy to get the mail and newspapers while I was gone. The drive to Iowa took a few long days, but since we were both driving, it went pretty quickly. The drive home alone took much longer. At least that's how it seemed to me. Home as I knew it was no longer there. All that was left of the house was a pile of burned boards and a pile of yellow tape. I probably should have given old man McElhaney my cell phone number before I left. It was getting late, so I got a motel room for the night. I'd have plenty of time to talk to the authorities in the morning. Marcia Tolliver seemed to know her husband pretty well. After a hearty breakfast, I called Joyce. Everything was fine at the office, but Frank Tolliver had been arrested. She didn't know anything else. She said I owed her dinner. I called Mape's house, and Brian picked up. "Hey, buddy. Glad to see you're out of jail. I was hoping you could tell me what's going on. How'd you end up in the house? I thought Candace kicked you out." "John, have you been home yet? Your house is gone." "Yeah, I know. I had to stay at a motel last night." "Well, welcome to reality. Candace and Julie have moved in with their parents. The only problem is Julie's in jail with her boyfriend." "I'll tell you what, Brian. I'll come by this afternoon and you can bring me up to speed. It was going to be a busy day. First thing I did was go to the bank to see if I had any money left. Luckily, Julie didn't make it to the bank. I closed all my accounts and credit cards. At least I had some spare cash. I canceled Julie's cell phone number and paid the fine. I saw no reason to change my cell phone number. After the trip, I decided that no one knew about it anyway. I stopped by the police department to see if I needed to sign any papers or provide information. The guy in the suit and tie talked to me for about 20 minutes, after which I left. Old McElhaney did a good job for me. He saw Julie and Frank go into the house. He even wrote down the license plate number of Frank's car. Julie took out a couple loads of clothes, and then they set the house on fire. They did it late at night, but McElhaney never misses a thing. For once, I was glad to have a nosy neighbor. Julie admitted to the police that they did it, but it was out of revenge since I burned Frank's house to the ground. I called Brian and asked him to meet me at the Dreamland bar. I was in for a treat. He quickly brought me up to speed. Candace wanted a divorce. He agreed if she dropped the assault charges. Now, all they had to do was wait for the right time to pass. At that point, I didn't know if Julie wanted a divorce or not. I know she did. Candace and Julie were living with their parents, but it wasn't the best option. When their father found out what was going on, he let the dogs on them. Now Candace is home recovering, and Julie is in jail waiting for her dad to post bail. I liked the way things were working out. I called Sharon and told her about the house. Joyce was happy to see me the next morning. I was able to handle all my work in no time. The company decided to fire Frank. I didn't know what reason they had for doing that. His breakroom buddies avoided me like the plague. I liked that. Julie's father called me to see if I could help bail him out. I told him that the only way to raise the money was to take out a second mortgage, which I was sure the bank wouldn't approve. He didn't appreciate the sarcasm, but I think he understood. He must have been desperate to call me. After lunch, I stopped by my attorney's and started the divorce papers. I called Julie's father and told him I would bail her out if she signed the divorce papers. He seemed to appreciate that I had found a compromise that could help the situation. I told him that if he could convince her to agree to it, I would have everything ready by the next evening. An hour later, he called back and said she agreed. The insurance company was in shock over the claim. I insisted that Frank burned the house to the ground and Julie wasn't actively involved, but they weren't buying it. I eventually gave up so they could settle it on their own. At that point, I was a bit stunned and just wanted it to be over soon. Suddenly, the company asked me if I was interested in transferring to Huntsville. It was unexpected, but I was glad for the vote of confidence as it was a good promotion. Joyce wanted to come with me. Over the next month, things normalized. Candace recovered from her well-deserved beating and began treating her soon-to-be ex-husband with renewed respect. Clayton Simmons was found badly beaten behind a local strip club. He was unable or unwilling to identify the man who did it. Brian and I signed up at a local health club that the girls used to attend. 2 days later, 2 regular members of the club decided to quit. After that, we terminated our membership. For some strange reason, my car insurance company decided to pay me for the loss of my Mustang. Although I had bought it for Julie, it was still registered in my name. The issue of home insurance was still hanging in the air. Julie supported the prosecution's testimony against Frank and ended up getting 2 years probation. Frank ended up getting 10 years. Joyce and I are leaving for Huntsville next week. I'd love to tell you about our tumultuous affair, but I'll save that for another time. She wants me to buy her a 1969 Camaro. I'm thinking about it.